Hello, children. This is Mrs. Carla, the math lady. Oops. This is Carpenter Carla. I have my carpenter hat and my pencil. I have a tool and I have a nail. So I'm going to be Carpenter Carla today. And we are covering, if you see up there at the board, we are covering Fractions Lesson 2, Writing Fractions. And let me get a good picture of our board here and let us begin. Now, we are going to look at our measurements and we're going to see some of the things that we take fractions of. Okay, now 1 yard is this big measuring stick here. And 1 yard is made up of 3 feet, and 1 foot ends right here at 12 inches. And then another foot ends right here at 24 inches. And then the last foot ends at 36 inches. And then 36 inches is how many inches are in a yard. And an inch is this tiny little bit right there. That's 1 inch, 2 inches, 3 inches. And if I get my little thing up there close, you can see the inch marks. 1, 2, 3. But it's hard to keep you that close because you can't see the board. Okay? So, my job is to put a nail at 1 inch on my yardstick. Okay, but of course, I don't want to ruin my yardstick and I really don't want to ruin my whiteboard, but we're pretending today. So here we go. Ready? There we go. We put a pretend nail right here at 1 inch on the board. Now, 1 inch is what part of a yard? And we're going to use our fractions here. Okay, how many inches were there on a yard altogether? 36 inches in a yard altogether. And we put our nail at 1 inch. So we put our nail at 1/36 of a yard. Okay, so now if we have our nail here, we have 1/36 of our yard this way, but guess what? If I wanted to know how much of my yardstick was on that side, what would I do? How many inches are left if I take off the 1 inch? Well, 36, take away 1 is 35. So this part of the yardstick is 35/36. So we'll write this over here because this is the leftover. We'll just put leftover there. And 35/36 would be what was the leftover on the other side of the nail. So here's my nail. And we're going to put a nail at 7 inches. So we're going to take out the old nail. We're going to put a nail right at 7 inches. And there's 7 inches. You ready? Bam, bam, bam. Okay, so we got a pretend nail there at 7 inches. Do you think a carpenter would have to know his fractions pretty well? I think he would. He would have to know his fractions or he wouldn't know where to saw and cut. He has to measure. In fact, there's an old carpenter saying, it says, measure twice, cut once. Because if you measure incorrectly and you cut, then you've ruined your piece of wood. So always measure twice before you cut. All right, so here we have 7 inches right there where the little red dot is. And now, what part of the yardstick is to the left of the 7 inches? Well, there's 7. And then how many inches in the whole yardstick? 36. Okay, now don't be confused. A lot of people do different things with fractions. 7/36 is the same thing as 7/36. It just depends on how you write them. This division sign and this division sign both mean exactly the same thing. And sometimes when I don't have a lot of space, I might end up putting it a little sideways. So don't get confused. 7 out of 36 of a yard is to the left of my nail. Okay, but to the right of my nail, what part of the yardstick is left over? Well, what is 36? Take away 7, because that's how many inches are on that side, and that would be 29, right? 29 inches are to the right of the nail, so on the leftover part, we have 29/36 left over after we use up 7/36 of the yard. Okay, now 35 inches into the yard. So we're going to take away our little nail here, and we're going to put our nail, and we're going to go 35 inches, and 35 inches is way over to the right. Here, right there, almost to the end, because there's only 36 inches in the nail, in the yard. So 35 out of 36 will go here. And what part of the yard is left over after I put a nail 35/36 of the way through? There's only 1 inch left. So we would say 1 out of 36 yards is left over. Okay, now look at the next one. It says 2 feet out of a yard. Okay, well, how many feet are in a yard? There's 3 feet. Remember, that's 1 foot. That's 2 feet. And that's 3 feet. If I took my little ruler, my little foot ruler off the board, this is 1 foot, and I were to measure it, I'd get 1, 2, 3 feet in a yard. Okay, so 2 feet would end right here at 24 inches. So 2 out of how many feet in a yard? 3 feet in a yard, right? So 2 feet is 2/3 of a yard. What portion of a yard is left over if we put a nail at 2/3 of a yard? Then we only have 12 inches left. 36 minus 24 is 12. 12 is 1 foot. 1 foot is 1/3 of a yard. Now look at this, what we've done. I had 136 and my leftover was 35/36. Pretty soon we're going to be adding fractions together. But remember, 36 inches is the whole. So what I've used up and what I have left over should always add up to be one whole. Does 1 plus 35 add up to be 36, which is the whole? Yes. Does 7 plus 29 add up to be 36, which is the whole? Yes. 35 plus 1 is 36, which is the whole. 2 plus 1 is 3, which is the whole. 3 parts in the whole. So remember what our fractions mean. When we're talking about 2 feet is 2/3 of a yard, we're saying 2 parts out of 3 equal parts. And we showed that the 3 equal parts were each a foot. And there were 3 feet in the yard. All right, let's look down at the next one. This is my 1 foot ruler, and 1 foot is 12 inches. Okay, so 3 inches would be what part of a foot? So to do that, we always need to know how much is a whole, and the whole is 12 inches. We always have to make sure that our units are the same. So in our mind, we can say 3 feet, 3 inches, and 12 inches. So this is 3/12 of a foot. Okay, now 3/12, let's look up here at our little fraction pies. 3/12. All right, look at 3/12. What does 3/12 look like it equals? And we'll work on reducing fractions a lot more later. But let's grab one of our fourths. And let's put the 12ths on the fourth. Oh my goodness, look. It is exact. 1/4 is equal to 3/12. So we're going to begin very soon reducing. 3/12 is the same thing as 1/4 of a foot. And as soon as we learn how to do reducing the fractions, we're not really reducing. They're calling them renaming now. Okay, but we're renaming the fraction to get this denominator as low as we can. And we'll talk more about that as we go. But 6 inches is what part of a foot. So in our brain, we have to remember that 1 foot is 12 inches. 6 out of 12 is 6/12. I gave my 6 a tail and I shouldn't. 6/12 and 6/12. If 3/12 is a quarter, then 6/12 will be a half. 6/12 is the same thing as 1/2. Now, look at that. 6 divided by what gives you 1? 6 divided by 6 gives you 1. 12 divided by 6 gives you 2. Okay, so when we are renaming our fractions and getting a smaller denominator, we're going to be dividing by the same number. So if we divide by 6/6, remember 6/6 is 1. 6 out of 6 is 1. So we're always multiplying or dividing by 1. And remember, when we multiply by 1 or divide by 1, it has no changes. It makes no changes in the number whatsoever. So these are actually equal. Remember, you can get 6/12 and you would have a whole nother quarter, and 2 quarters makes a half. Okay, now 8 inches is what part of a foot? Okay, well 8 inches and 12 inches is going to be 8 out of 12. 12 makes the whole. 8 is how many pieces that are 12ths. Okay, now 8/12 would be how much when we reduce it, rename it, trying to get this down as far as we can. What if we divide by 4 and 4? Okay, 4 divided by 4 is 1. So we're really just dividing the top and the bottom, the whole fraction, we're dividing it by 1. 8 divided by 4 is 2. And 12 divided by 4 is 3. So 8/12 is 2/3. Well, let's check it out. All right, so let's come over here, and I'm going to get 2/3 from my little fraction board. And I'll sit down in a minute so you can see my face. Okay, so there's a third, and here's a third. So we have 2/3, and we're trying to see if, yes indeedy, does 8/12 equal same thing. So I'm going to bring our 12ths over here, and sit down again. All right, and we have 3/12 already put together. So I'm going to use those 3/12 we already put together. And I'll put them right here. Okay, and then we have another 12th. Ooh, look at that. 4/12 was 1/3. Okay, so if I put another 12 and another 12 and another 12th, and another 12th. Then I have 8/12 is exactly 2/3. Okay? All right, so 8/12 is 2/3, and we showed that it is true. Now, let's go over here to my clock, okay? And my clock here is a fun thing to do fractions with. We know there are 60 minutes in an hour, and there are 60 seconds in a minute. But let's just look at the whole clock right now. We know there are 12 hours on the clock. And what is a 12:15? Very often you'll say, I'll see you at 12:15 or 12:15. And everybody goes, a quarter? We think of a quarter as 25 cents, but a quarter is 15 minutes out of every hour is a quarter. Okay, so basically here is a 12:15. Do you see how my clock is a whole? Okay, and when I divide it into half, and then I divide it in half again, see I have these lines, dividing it into half and quarter, okay? When I divide it into half and half again, I have quarters, and this is 1/4, 2/4, 3/4 of an hour, and then the whole hour. 4/4 would be a whole. So anytime somebody says, I'll see you at 12:15, they mean 15 minutes, because there are 60 minutes in an hour, and 12:15 would be 12:15. So that way, when somebody says they're going to meet you at 12:15, you know to meet them at 12:15. And this is Mrs. Carla, and I will see you in a little bit with more math, naming fractions, writing fractions.